Good morning, everyone. I am Amrinder Singh Shergill, faculty member at Chandigarh Judicial Academy. I welcome all the learned judicial magistrates from the states of Punjab, Haryana, and UT Chandigarh in this webinar on a very required subject, inquiring custodial deaths, law and procedure. We all know that Code of Civil Procedure provides the conduct of an inquiry by a judicial magistrate, but the details are not provided there. The Chandigarh Judicial Academy has received various inputs on the basis of which certain questions have been formulated. So I'll be moderating this session. We'll be asking those questions to our worthy speaker one by one. If any one of you have any question, don't hesitate to chat it in the given box. Today's session is being taken by Shri Pradeep Mehta, a very learned and senior faculty member at Chandigarh Judicial Academy. We all know Sir has a very long and rich experience running into 45 years in the legal field. Sir had been in the prosecution department, and while being there, the Sir had the privilege of conducting the prosecution of the high profile cases during that period of ministers, of chairmen, and of bureaucrats. Sir has superannuated from the prosecution department Punjab in September 2011 as Joint Director Prosecution. Sir has joined the Academy in January 2012 and is doing a remarkable service since then. Let us take benefit out of the rich and long experience of Sir in knowing the various aspects of conduct of an inquiry by a judicial magistrate into custodial deaths. I welcome you, Sir, and pose the first question as to, Sir, please tell us which legal provisions deal with the custodial death and what are their objectives. Over to you, Sir.
Thank you. So I welcome all the officers who are in attendance from Punjab, Haryana and UT Chandigarh. As has been said by our respected colleague, Mr. Shergill, so he will be moderating it and he has drafted certain questions on the basis of the inputs. And the first question he has thrown upon me is that what are the legal provisions which deal with the custodial deaths and procedure, and what are the objectives of this class? So in this regard, as you all are aware, that section 176 deals with the inquiry by magistrate into cause of death. Earlier to 2005, the same was being done by the magistrate who are in charge of the executive. But since it was being observed that they are very, very casual in conducting this inquiry, so it was decided that the amendment should be effected in this section, and by intent of adding section 1A, this scenario was changed. Then onwards, whenever it is a death or disappearance or his rape is alleged to have been committed on the person who is in custody, whether of the police or any other custody which has been authorized by the magistrate. Of course, you are authorizing these custodies. Then in that case, the inquiry is to be conducted either by the judicial magistrate or the metropolitan magistrate. And this is to be conducted in order to find out as to the cause, not only the cause of the death, but as to whose negligence or what has contributed towards that. This is the provision which is there in the CRPC. We will be dealing it as and when the necessity arises to referring it to the question. But now the objective of this, as I have already told you, that it was being felt that the inquiries are not being conducted properly by the executive magistrate. That is why the metropolitan magistrates or judicial magistrates were taken into the fold for conducting the inquiry. Then what is the object? As I will like to tell you that as per the data, after each day after 2005, each day nearly 5 deaths in the judicial custody are taking place. 5 deaths. Recently, a PIL has been filed by S. Chamka in the Supreme Court, wherein he has held that out of the total number of deaths, only 20% have been inquired into properly. Now, what is this? Despite this, that every inquiry is to be, every death is to be inquired into, every rape, every disappearance is to be inquired into. Why it is not being inquired? In C, whenever, we will say, whenever a person is arrested in this civilized society, can it be said that his fundamental right of life has been put to be abeyance? He has shed off his right? The answer to this was given in D.K. Vasu's case by the Honorable Supreme Court by saying no. It is not there. Recently, in Tamil Nadu, a duo of son and father was hacked to death by torture in the judicial police custody. And what was their fault? During lockdown, they had opened their mobile shop. Then we can say that the object is virtually to put an end to the such cases in which it is there that the right to life is not there whenever a person is arrested by the police. And that is why the inquiry into these custodial deaths should be conducted very meticulously. No scope should be left while giving the report in such cases, because only then, which is called a disease in the society, not otherwise, in the society, that is the torture in the police custody, negligence or the torture in the judicial lockups, and rapes in the police custody or judicial lockups is not there. So I think Shergilji, this is the objective and this is the provision which is there in the CRPC.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the next question with me is, the Code of Civil Procedure uses two terms, inquest and inquiry. Sir, please elaborate to us what is the difference in between them.
Right. Generally, even to the inquiry which is being conducted under 176, it is said that inquest is being conducted by the magistrate. Because when we see the dictionary meaning of the inquest, it is a judicial inquiry in common law jurisdictions, particularly one held to determine the case of person's death in the custody. So this is the dictionary meaning of the inquest. But in CRPC, though with regard to the section 174 which deals with the inquest, inquiry with E is written as in the heading. But in section 176, it is inquiry. Inquiry has been defined in section 2G of the CRPC as other than the trial conducted under the code by a magistrate. Whereas the objective of the inquest is merely to ascertain whether a person has died under unnatural circumstances or an unnatural death, and if so, what is the cause of death? Only cause of death. The question regarding the details as to how the deceased was assaulted, who assaulted him, under what circumstances he was assaulted, with which weapon he was assaulted, all are foreign to the ambit and scope of the proceedings under 174, that is inquest. All are only probable cause on appearance, as it is from appearance, not otherwise. Whereas now if we come to the this inquiry, we have to provide answer to the who are the persons responsible at the helm of affairs, because it is to be inquired. IN. Inquiry is simply to have something asked. Even then, Punjab Police Rules 25.35, please note it. Very material, Rule 25.35, both of Haryana and Punjab Police Rules, is that inquest report is apparent cause of death. Apparent marks of violence which are found on the body, described in the manner given in the performance, accompanied by the plan of scene of death, inventory of clothing, and all the documents which are to form the part of the post-mortem report along with, that is, the inquest. Now, before going to further, say if a person is shot dead by a bullet in encounter and he is put in car and the car is put on fire. The body is charred now. In order to make you clear understanding of the difference between the inquest and the inquiry, which will be conducted thereafter, this will be, I think, best example. Now the person who will be conducting the inquest has to give the apparent cause of death. Apparent injuries. Now, what will be the apparent injuries? Of course, burning. Total body charred. No injury on the superficial, which is evident. No bullet mark because the body is charred. But now, when inquiry is to be conducted, the first thing which will be done will be X-ray. and in that bullet embedded in the body will come. If some bone has been pierced, that will come. And then the cause will be in inquiry, yes, bullet injury. So this is the marked difference which can come in the inquest and inquiry. Shergill Sahab, I think I am clear in this aspect.
Sir, a very fine example distinguishing both of these. Now, sir, moving on to next question. Please tell us who is competent to conduct inquest and who is competent to conduct inquiries. Over to you, sir.
Yes, thank you. Now, in answer to this question, I would like to say that so far as the inquest is concerned, purpose and the field is clear. But if we go to section 174, then generally it is only the in charge of the police station or some other police officer who has been so specifically empowered for conducting this inquest by the state government or the district magistrate, he can conduct the inquest. Apart from it, executive magistrate can also hold inquest, SDMs, district magistrates, and the executive magistrate were specially empowered to conduct these inquests by the state government or the district magistrate himself. They are the persons who can conduct the inquest. Whereas under section 176, it is the executive magistrate because that has not been effaced from the section 176. So it needs a little reference. When it is with regard to the death of a woman within 7 years in the in-laws of house under suspicious circumstances, or if it is by suicide within 7 years of marriage by the woman in the in-laws house, then that inquiry is to be conducted by the executive magistrates. But when it is with relating to the death in custody, disappearance, or the rape in the custody, whenever I will be referring custody, please note that it can be police as well as judicial. Need not to say every time, to save the time. So that will be conducted by the judicial magistrate or metropolitan magistrate concerned. So this is the answer to this.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to next query. Sir, please tell us as to whether the inquiry which is to be conducted by a judicial magistrate is in addition to the investigation conducted by the police, sir. Over to you, sir.
Yes, this is very, very important question which we have framed. The inquiry under section 176 1A, as the wording of the section is implicitly clear that this can be in addition or instead of the investigation by the two words are they are used, in addition or instead of. Now the question arises, can it be only in addition or instead of? With regard to that, it is my observation or my view that whenever, say, a crime is committed, like death in custody, then disappearance, then rape on a woman, all these are cognizable offences. And as per the decision rendered by Honorable Supreme Court in Bhajanlal's case, and thereafter D.K. Basu's case in 2015, both these cases, FIR is to be recorded. So when FIR is to be recorded of having been committed the crime by unknown person in custody, then investigation the police is to be there. And simultaneously, when the case is such which is falling under 176 1A, inquiry is also mandatory after 2005, because the word used is, if you please refer to the section, it is shall. Because in 1 it is may, whereas in 1A it is shall be held. So it is always in addition to the investigation by the police. So I think, is this clear, or some more question is there in your mind?
Sir, it is very much clear, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, moving on to the next question. Please tell us, sir, what is the procedure to be adopted in conduct of such inquiries by a judicial magistrate? Over to you, sir.
Welcome. So here, I will say that when you read this section 176 1A, it does not prescribe any procedure. It simply says that inquiry shall be held by the judicial magistrate or the metropolitan magistrate. However, under subsection 2, 3, and 4, few things have been written that how the witnesses can be examined, that he will record the evidence. Then if the body has been, say, this is subsection 3. If the body has already been inferred, then in order to inquire, the body can be disinterred. Because without disentering the body, the post-mortem cannot be got conducted. The other tests cannot be got conducted. So it is necessary. Only these things are written. And one explanation which is very material, which is connecting the subsection 4, that the relatives and friends are to be informed of the deceased, and who are the relatives and friends, that is given in expression of the explanation, that who are they? They are children, parents, brothers, sisters, and spouse. Nothing more than this is written. For this, the two things are required. First, we have to see that what we have to do in the section. We have to come to the conclusion as to whether any person is found responsible for the deaths, or there is any suspicion of foul play. Second, the act of commission and omissions which have been there on the part of the public servant in charge of the custody, which has contributed towards the death. And the third, adequacy of medical treatment and negligence in providing that, which has resulted into the death. That is also very material. So these things are to be inquired into. And for this, as we see, now take an example. There is a police officer in the police station where death has occurred. All the other police officers in that police station who are present at that time, they are in a brotherhood of that person who is to be held responsible. Will they let you know anything with regard to the why the as the result of which the consequences was there? No, they will not. They will help their brother? No. So for this reason, it will be very, very difficult that there will be expressed direct ocular evidence which you can record. Very, very rare. Yes. Say if there is some more person who is in judicial lockup or in the police lockup at that time, in the presence of whom the interrogation has been done and the result is such injury which has resulted into death, then that person, if very strong, may come forward with some ocular evidence. So, dear officers, you have to look for the circumstantial evidence only and only in which the person in the custody has died. In this regard, guidelines have been issued by the National Human Rights Commission. You can find it in detail in SOP of Human Rights Commission guidelines, which are available on the net. But the very important parts which are there, they are that you must visit the place of occurrence to acquaint yourself as to the what are the relevant facts available on the ground. During the scene of crime, you can observe certain things. Whenever a death is reported to you, now suppose if there was a case in which a person has committed suicide in washroom with the string of his pajama by tying it to the tap of wash basin and his neck, then that should not be removed unless you have seen the body. You should make an attempt to see that how the things are there placed vis-a-vis the other things at the scene of crime. Then you have to select that who can be the persons whose presence is there on record, otherwise not on record, or who they say that we were present there. You can record them statements. Then a public notice can be issued through vernacular newspapers that any person who is conversant with any of the facts which can throw light into the circumstances which have led into the torture or the say death in the custody. Now there are also even these session courts are convicting on the basis of the last seen evidence, unless it is shown that he parted the company of the last seen person at the time when the death took place. So who had taken him? Which police has taken him at which time? If anybody is knowing, you can ask as a public note by public notice from the persons. Then you should cover invariably the circumstances of the death, the manner of sequence of the events which are there leading to the death. Then if available, the cause of death from the postmortem. So here the postmortem report gets relevancy, too much relevance. Any person found for the death or foul play or who appears to be negligent in providing medical aid, that is act of commission or omissions on the part of that servant who is at the helm of affairs, or adequacy of medical treatment. You should also examine and verify. Now here the very important first document, inquest report. Now in other cases, the inquest report as per section 174 is to be prepared by the investigating officer. Here you have to got it prepared by from the investigating. He will also prepare it because he is investigating the case simultaneously, but then you will be countersigning it. Yes, this is correct. Then you should examine the viscera report, viscera analysis report. Now take the example which we just discussed, that bullet injury was given. So say he has committed, having faced too much torture at the hands of judicial, police officials in the police custody or in judicial custody from the jail authorities or other authorities. He has committed suicide by taking some poisonous substance. And thereafter, somebody has intentionally put him on fire. He was standing in kitchen making the preparation. He was burnt. Then the viscera report will be very, very important factor to analyze it, that whether the poison which has been found in the viscera, was it a result of only, because here sometimes you will be finding that 0.2% poisonous substance in the viscera of every person of us. And this is because of the vegetables, pulses, which we are taking, because of the spray. It is an observation of a very senior forensic doctor, Dr. Devan, that he has said that 0.2% of the poisonous substance is in everybody's viscera. Then histopathological examination, MLR reports, etc., medical treatment which was given, inquiry, investigation reports, other things, ballistic examination reports. When it is a firearm case, very important is ballistic report and firearms. So all these things which are there in detail, which you can please find out in the guidelines. So they are the, because it will be taking much time if we read everything before I have given you the crux, which has been said by the National Human Rights Commission. So you can read that in total, that what you have to do as a guidelines for the inquiry. So this is, I think, will suffice the purpose, Shergilji.
Yes, sir, very much, sir. Sir, moving on to the next question. So the part of you have already answered, but keeping in view its importance, I'm asking it specifically, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, which persons and witnesses are to be examined by a magistrate while holding such an inquiry? Over to you, sir.
Thank you. So here, first of all, a notice is to be given to the relatives of the deceased. The father, mother, as I have said from the explanation, that these are the relatives. So they are to given the notice. Can you please come? Because there's death of this person, and they should be waited. They should be waited till they come, unless they refuse to come. Because if some person refuses to come, you can't help. But the endeavor should be that they should come present. They can be requested, and body should not be sent for postmortem unless they have been provided opportunity to see the dead body and even take the photographs if they desire. If they desire, they should be allowed to take the photograph. This is the decision of the Madras High Court. I am telling you this only on the basis of that. So, otherwise too, it is there in the instructions. And minimum period for which the dead body can be kept without sending in for postmortem, that is 24 hours. The body should definitely be dispatched for conducting the postmortem within 24 hours. More than this, that should not be kept. But yes, if there is small delay in coming, or if they say they are coming after 24 hours and half, the relatives being residing at a place far off, then of course it can be recorded and the body can be sent with the reason to be recorded after 20. So this is one. Secondly, from the jail, the inmates of the cell. Now take a case. I will be appropriately explaining it by an example. Say a person is there in the jail. His condition is deteriorating due to some harassment or say torture. Then the inmates of the room in which he is being kept. And if otherwise there is a negligence in dealing with then every time he has been sent to the hospital, jail hospital, or say to the outside hospital with the reference from the jail doctor for treatment, then whole of the record, all the persons who have taken him, those should be examined. Now suppose a person has been referred from jail authorities to local civil hospital and from local civil hospital to some other district or say PGI. Then in that case, the person who is taking him from one place to the other with the records of the jail, who were accompanying him as jail personals, as to guard the person, all those should be examined. So it is to vary. No hard and fast rule can be given that this person should be examined. But as I have said, we have to collect the circumstantial evidence, and every person who is making the link to the circumstances, those should be examined. I think, is it clear, or I should give something more?
Sir, it is very much clear, sir. Now moving on further to another important aspect of post-mortem. Sir, please tell us how the post-mortem examination is to be conducted. What is the procedure and the manner which is required to be adopted by a judicial magistrate? Sir.
Sir, in this regard, as well as the officers who are in attendance, generally, the post-mortem is being conducted by the doctor of the civil hospital, who is empowered to perform the autopsy on the dead body. But here, the matter is somewhat different. The post-mortem should be conducted at least by a board of doctors. And the magistrate, immediately after sending the body with the police authorities, should request to the civil chief medical officer to constitute a board, and with one of the doctors should be an expert in forensic medicine. This is very important. One officer or doctor should be a forensic medicine. And here's one special format of requiring the doctor to fill the post-mortem report has been issued by the National Human Rights Commission, observing that the post-mortem which are being conducted in routine are not catering to the need of the torture. Now here I will give you one example. Our sole of the feet and the hands, just come, we call it hatheli. They are so strong that any torture, any beating, any infliction of a force on hands inner side and the soles of the feet does not reveal easily, I will not say always, easily the impression of the torture. Because you know our soul feet is always in contact with the hard surface. So it is so hard, and you will find that a person who are moving barefooted, their soul is so hard that if you touch it, it is like a wood. So if some beating is given, that does not come as an impression on these two things. That is why in post-mortem, which is required for torture, it has been specifically said that doctor should put a cut on the sole of the hands and feet and should see any hematoma or see tissue fracture underneath, which can be the result of the injury. Then the way of torture is not that easy to reveal from the body. They have written it in the post-mortem performa. That I think you might be knowing, officers who are senior officers. There is one, say, way of torturing, that is putting kotna. When the police arrests some person, they say kotna lao hai te 2 minutes 10 loga. And that kotna is a wooden log which is placed on the legs of the person, and 2 persons stand on it, and this is moved slowly on the legs up to the top portion and then back. This actually causes hematoma and fracture of the muscles inside, but no injury outwards. Because that is so fine that you will not be able to judge that here the say some beating was given. So these type of tortures, then sahos, sakanja, that is also one of the way, but that will be revealed by the post-mortem if internal tissue is to be seen very carefully. So that is why Human Rights Commission has written in post-mortem, while doing post-mortem, the 3 doctors should reveal by talking to each other that this shows this thing, so that from the observation of their talking inter-se, it can be revealed that doctor is of the view that this injury can be there as a result of torture. So that post-mortem report, which performa, which is running into about 20 pages, that can be looked into, especially before referring a case for the post-mortem, that yes, this performa should be filled. So this is the way, in short, requiring the post-mortem to be done. And the doctor should be very specific in writing down the all things. Speaking also, discussing also, and writing also. So this is the main thing with regard to the difference which is there in ordinary post-mortem and post-mortem in custodial deaths. So this is my view with regard to the question.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Moving further, sir, please tell us as to what are the latest guidelines for video filming and photography of the post-mortem examination, and sir, what is the aim in getting it video filmed or photographed? Over to you, sir.
This is very important. Very important. Video filming of the post-mortem is mandatory. First, it was in all cases, but now by the revised instructions, they have said that where is any suspicion of injury, torture, or foul play, or in respect of that negligence was there. So virtually, though it has been eased out that video filming being costly affair can be dispensed with, But when we see to the requirements in which they have said, even the revised instructions, that this should be the cases in which the video filming is there, it comes to that almost all cases in which torture is there. Yes, if some person has died with disease, heart attack, and then this is only the report, that can be. But if there is a foul play, then no, it was not only heart attack, but something else was also there, but the report has been taken only of heart attack in order to camouflage the torture. Then of course video filming is necessary. So it means almost all cases that video filming is required. Now with this aim that the record which is made by video filming, especially pertaining to the marks of injury, of violence, and the internal tissue, which suggests custodial torture. One thing will be that the undue influence or the suppression of the material information which is revealed by the postmortem will not be there, because it will be evident. Secondly, subsequently, if some independent review of the postmortem is to be done by some other experts, say the family members are there. Now here I will add one more thing, that if any family member wants to be present during the postmortem, he should be allowed by the judicial magistrate conducting the inquiry. So when that's independent, say if he says that I am not satisfied with the postmortem examination report by that board which has been constituted, then in that case, obviously, when review is to be conducted of that, video filming will be the only material. And that is why I have said, and they have also incorporated, that the doctor should be talking inter se. One thing will be that the video filming will show that this is the color of the tissue, this is the color of, this is the situation of the tissue, this is the situation of the bone, and then the other will be that what he is talking or what he is expressing with regard to that position, that will be reviewed by the independent, subsequently doctor who is to conduct the review. So this is so very important. Now, apart from it, in each case of video filming, which should be there in complete daylight, so that the very material is coloration. I think those officers who have conducted this inquiry in some cases, they will be knowing it, that very important is the coloration. Apart from the viscera report, color of the viscera is also very important. Sometimes, say, if a person has been tortured by making him stand for continuously 10 hours, then blood will gather in the lower limbs. And on death, that portion will become dark blue. So that coloration is very important. And the second thing which is required by the Human Rights Commission is that not only the videography, but photographs should also be taken covering the whole body. Some photographs should be taken without removing the clothes. Some should include profile photo face, then front of the body and back, upper extremities from back and front, lower extremities from front and back. Then, very important is focusing of each injury with zoomed lens. Lens should be zoomed first normally, then zooming it. Then each photo should be marked properly with the name, person, and number of the case, so that it may not be intermingled with other photos. Then, very important, 2 photos of the soles and palms should be taken along with the video frame. And that too after the cut is there and opened, sole is opened. One thing. The second thing which is very important, just one minute, so sorry. Which is second more importantly, that every photograph should be taken by placing the camera at the right angle. Exactly at the right angle and with a zoomed lens of 10x. What is the purpose? I will explain you that if it is not at right angle to the injury, it is on say slightly at the angle of 60 degree left side and 30 degree right side, the dimension of the injury, the structure of the injury will differ. I think Mr. Shergill, you will agree with me that the correct picture can be only obtained if it is at the exact 90 degree angle from the injury. So that is why the commission has said it, that it should be taken by placing the camera at 90 degrees. So this should be seen by the magistrate that this is being done. So I think this is the with regard to the photography and videography of the postmortem part.
Yes, sir. A small question is arising.
Yes, please.
Whether the videographer and the photographer, which a judicial magistrate is required to engage, should be a normal videographer or photographer, or should he be trained in this science?
See, it is better if he is trained in this science. It is much better. And generally, the photographers are there in the say PTC follow, then in Madhuban, who are dealing with such forensic things. They can be the best answer to this and provide complete videography and pictures which are required as per the guidelines. But yes, if that is not there, then expert the photographers or the videographers who are well trained in this, they can be engaged, and with the directions particularly to them, they can be asked to do the videography and photography. One thing which now will emerge otherwise also from your question, now whether the judicial magistrate is to be present during the postmortem, because he is to see that everything is being done. If it is not being done, then subsequently it will be of no help to cry on the spilt milk. फिर क्या करेंगे? So it is better, though it is no legal requirement that the magistrate should be present, but magistrate should often going and coming back by guiding them कि ये कुछ कर रहे हो या नहीं. So and guide should be guiding them to do this thing, which that is talking with each other, referring to the injuries, and whatever is to be done, that they are being and they are doing it, and videography is being done. So if the person of confidence is there, or you also say to the relatives and friends of, but it is very difficult for the relatives and friends to see the site. But anyhow, this should be done, and even then, there should not be hurry in disposing the body. As in Hathras case of UP, the body was burnt, say consigned to flames, I will say not burnt with respect to the dead body. Immediately, that created a problem. So here that should not be done. Proper time, even after post-mortem, should be given to the deceased relatives, that if they want to get it second autopsy, they can get it done if they are not satisfied. So it is only with their consent that the order should be passed that yes, body will consent to flames. So I think I have answered your question.
Yes, sir. Very well answered, sir. Sir, moving on to the next question. Whether there are any specific precautions which a magistrate is required to take in the exercise of video filming and photography of the post-mortem examination. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. I think I have answered this in the answer to these 2 or 3 questions, that only these are the precautions which have to be taken while getting the videography and post-mortem conducted. But yes, the delay should not be there, one thing. Other, the doctors board, whichever is constituted by the CMO, must be made aware of the facts that what they have to do. They should not skip any point. They should not skip the talking. Videography should be done as in the manner prescribed. So this is, I think, interconnected with the question which has been answered by me earlier. So I think it will be otherwise repetition of the same again, which I will not mind, but I think so. It has been answered in the first 2 questions.
Sir, a specific point was coming to my mind.
Yes, please.
Like the deceased was wearing certain clothes at the time when he died.
Yes.
Were those clothes are required to be removed before the post-mortem examination, or the deceased should be in the same clothes, sir? Over to you.
No. Here, when the body is sent, by preparing the inquest, there are certain conditions that his hand should be put in gloves. The clothes should not be removed. However, if there are some injuries, piercing, something else in the clothes, that should be written. Then after that, if the clothes are removed, they should be removed very softly, so that any limb or any portion, particularly when the body is decomposed, a bit decomposed or rigorous mortis are present, then they should not get disturbed, and then the body should be sent by properly sealing it in an envelope, zipped envelope. So this is the condition in which the body is to be sent to the doctors for postmortem.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Sir, please tell us whether after the post-mortem report given by the medical board, whether the judicial magistrate is to accept it as it is or is required to analyze it, and if required, whose help the judicial magistrate can take. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. This is a common observation of the Human Rights Commission, and report has been there that generally post-mortem reports are not being perused or appreciated properly. They have to be looked into very carefully, along with the report on the viscera and others, because if, say, the suicide is there or hanging is there after torture, The difference will be there in the cartilaginous bone of the neck. It's fracture. The fracture of the tissue. So those things must be appreciated properly. If there is hematoma in the hands, that should be looked into very carefully in order to find out that whether the injuries on the hands, injuries on the sole were given. If the muscles are fractured, say, or blood clotting is there reported in the muscles only. So why blood clotting will come? So this is a point which is to be appreciated by the magistrate. And yes, if some help is to be taken, he can request to the CMO for some forensic doctor to be made available whose help can be taken. His statement can be recorded in addition to. So this is with regard to the question which you have, or which have come to your mind on the basis of the discussion.
Thank you, sir. Now, sir, moving on to another important aspect as far as judicial magistrates are concerned. Once the inquiry is concluded, a report is to be prepared.
Right.
Sir, please tell us as what should be contained in the magisterial inquiry report. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. This is very important that how the report should be written. There is no hard and fast rule which can be given with regard to the writing of the report that on conclusion the report should be to this effect or should contain these things. But yes, directions which have been issued by way of guidelines from the Human Rights Commission, they have said it that what should be there in the report writing. They have stated that the gist of the statements recorded, documents examined, discussion on allegations, whether proved or not proved, on the ground on which the conclusion is being arrived at by the magistrate. The circumstances which are circumstantial leading to the death. Then whether the use of the force was justified and action taken was lawful. That is to be mentioned in the report. Then if it is a report of acts and of commissions and omissions, those should be mentioned. Then these names of the officers who are responsible at the helm of affairs by way of negligence, by way of direct contribution towards the torture, that is to be written. And they can also write that in this case, this was lacking due to this fact. Say, I will be coming to just now after discussing one more thing. This is basically the contents which can be there in the report. No, the file which is being prepared can be divided into three parts. I will add one, report and forwarding letter only. Part one can be forwarding letter and report. The second can be evidence which has been recorded as annexure 1. And the third part of the file can be the annexures, that is the documents which have been collected. Those are to be included in that part. So that will be the best way or best format which can or which has come to my mind for a complete report. Because if it is haphazardly attached, then I think it will be very confusing and difficult to read. If report is written, then so far as the evidence is concerned, where as in say exhibit such and such, or here it will not be exhibited, because nobody is giving the statement to mark it that yes, this is so. Then that can be annexure A1, annexure A2, annexure A3, then the documents, annexure B1, B2, B3. So when it is in a seriatim, in all the three files, it will be very easy to read that report. So this can be the way in which the report can be edited and given to the concerned authority, that is session judge, and then can be sent to the Human Rights Commission also within. Here I will say that time period is also prescribed, which is 2 months. I will be just discussing it. But now, the magistrate, while parting with the inquiry, can also write that this was lacking and due to this, so instructions be issued in future so that this may not be a lapse on the part of the authorities. Now take a case when a jail authorities are sending the inmate from the jail hospital to the civil hospital with some injury. That injury report or that format which is there, say outslip, outdoor slip or indoor slip, indoor card which is called bed air ticket, which is being sent along with the jail inmate for referring him to civil hospital. The copy of that should also be sent to be retained by the hospital, and that should be written specifically copy for the referred hospital. Why? Because I am in knowledge of the case where the slip was sent. When the slip came back, it was tampered with by the jail doctor. What was the actually cause? He wrote it there with some other pen. But it was the intelligence of that officer, the medical doctor who was there in the civil hospital, that he got the photostat of the whole file there and kept it with him. Because he saw that the condition is very deteriorating. He may not survive. So he get that whole record copied, photocopied and kept it with him. And that subsequently revealed that the interpolation was made in the record which was sent for reference. So these things should also be looked into and plugged. There will be just a handle to know that how the inquiry is to be conducted. What are the materials which are to be taken into possession from different sources? So this is very important. That further, I will like to tell one thing to all the officers, that please act according to the logic best applied to the facts of the case and the situation in order to get the circumstantial evidences complete on the. So this is.
Sir, you have told us that there is a time frame of 2 months to conclude the inquiry.
Yes.
Sir, please tell us, what if some reports being called by the judicial magistrate are not available? Over to you, sir.
Right. In this regard, yes, as per the guidelines regarding the various aspects of the custodial deaths issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs and NHRC, time frame of 2 months has been fixed, in which the inquiry report should be submitted by the magistrate, inquiring magistrate. But yes, now there is a difficulty. It is see, several officers I also know has said it. Like, this is a very important question. That what if the report of VISRA or other chemical examiner reports are not received with regard to the serology and other things, hematology. In that case, please you can note down the instructions number, that is FN 15011/66/2020 HR-1 and 2, in which they have said that report should be sent within 2 months. Even if those reports have not been received, subject to the result of the reports. And then subsequently, those can be sent as annexures subsequent, by subsequent. See, report or say as an annexure to the earlier report, adding to it or confirming. So this is as per the directions issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs.
Sir, moving on to the next question. Sir, whether the post-mortem report and inquiry report, are they public documents? Can any person obtain their copies? Over to you, sir.
Very important question, because generally the postmortem report is asked by all the officers in order to know कि क्या postmortem report आई. And similarly, the inquest, what is there in that? And particularly the officers of the police, they are interested in it. Now, first we have to see whether these are public documents. Public documents are, if I'm not wrong, included in section 74 of the Evidence Act. And they are, if of the sovereign authority, of the official bodies and tribunals, and third, of public officers, legislative, judicial, and executive, that they are public documents. Others are not public documents. In case of Delhi administration versus Gyan Singh, which is reported as 1981, 19 volume, DLT, page 104, the question arose exactly with regard to the same document. So they refer to the Lord Blackburn view that dual requirements is there of the documents which are there to be called as public documents. They are not only in fact available for the public inspection, but they should be brought into existence for that very purpose, that is for the public. So dual criteria was said to have been given by Lord Blackburn, that it must be a document which is for public inspection, and apart from that, that should be brought into existence for the purpose of the public availability. Both these documents are not for the public availability. So they said no. When they fail to cater to these two things, the document in question is not shown to be a report or a document which can be a public document of which copies can be obtained. Now see, both these things will be available to the accused, and this protection is available till the challan is filed. Once the report under section 173 is filed in the court, in which they are tagged then accused will be entitled under section 207 of the CRPC to the copies of those documents. So they are not public documents and accused is not entitled to the copy till the challan is filed. I think it is clear.
Sir. Moving on to the next query. If an accused commits an offence, suppose in Patiala, and for medical treatment, that accused is referred to, suppose, PGI Chandigarh, and unfortunately he dies in PGI Chandigarh. Sir, the query is, which judicial magistrate out of those two stations of Patiala and Chandigarh will have the jurisdiction to hold the said inquiry? Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Now, my reply to this is that yes, this is very, very complicated situation, that as to which judicial officer should have the competence to conduct the. Now, if we go by the provision of section 176, it says that this inquiry is an addition to the inquiry or investigation held by the police, and an inquiry shall be held by the judicial magistrate or the metropolitan magistrate, as the case may be, within whose local jurisdiction the offence has been committed. Now, if the judicial magistrate in whose local jurisdiction the offence has been committed is having the jurisdiction to do the inquiry. What is the offence now? Offences: disappearance, death, and the rape in the custody, which is in the police or any custody authorized by the magistrate, in addition to or see, in addition to the inquiry held by the police or otherwise. Now, if this is so, the torture is definitely at Patiala in your proposition, but due to the deteriorated condition, he has been referred to PGI Chandigarh, where the death has ensued as a result of the torture. Now, if we go to chapter 13 of the CRPC, then section 177 says, ordinarily place of inquiry and trial. One thing I will agree, that this part is in the part of investigation, chapter 12, and this is chapter 13. Then that says every offence shall be ordinarily be inquired into or tried by the court within whose local jurisdiction it was committed. Right? So if the death has ensued at Patiala, resultantly of the torture which was given to the accused at Patiala in the judicial lockup or in the police lockup or in any other custody which was authorized by the magistrate, then the inquiry can be conducted by the magistrate at Patiala, any magistrate, because it is not that the jail in which the jail is there. It is the jurisdiction. So jurisdiction to kisi ki bhi hai, so which can be changed. So right from the CJM, ACJM, and the magistrate of Patiala can inquire into the whosoever has been asked to do it. But now, if the person has gone to some other place and he has died at Chandigarh PGI, then 179 is there. Offences travel where act is done or consequences ensues. So this gives power to the magistrate to inquire within local jurisdiction either the thing has been done or consequences have ensued. Now, if we see that what is the offense is death. If death has not been committed, अगर वो ठीक हो के आ जाता तो क्या ये इंक्वायरी होनी थी? नहीं. When the inquiry was not required, अगर वो वहां से ठीक हो के आ जाता. It is only the death which will clothe the judicial magistrates for the inquiry. So death has taken place at Chandigarh. In my view, the Chandigarh court or the magistrate in whose local jurisdiction death has ensued is having the power, along with though at the Patiala will also have the jurisdiction, but the most comfortably it will be dealt, it should be dealt with by the magistrate at Chandigarh. Because post-mortem is to be done at his request. Because the PGI authority will not be giving the dead body to any person without the post-mortem. And secondly, he is still in the custody in Chandigarh PGI of the Patiala police. Because they will be with him. If he is from jail, jail officials will be with him. If he is from police custody, police officials. This is my answer to this query of yours, Shergil.
Sir, moving on to the next thing which is coming to my mind is the report has been finalized and prepared by a judicial magistrate. Sir, what utility and evidentiary value this report carries? Over to you, sir.
See, it will be only have the evidentiary value of as the other reports of the commissions have. It will be only recommendation that as per him, this is the state of affair and these are the persons who are guilty according to him or responsible for it from him as per his view. It is not a trial. They cannot be clothed with guilt of having committed that offense. This is the very marked difference because here, see, most important, the inquiry in absentia of the accused. It is not with the help of the prosecutor. It is not evidence as per section 3 of the Evidence Act interpretation clause. Though it is evidence which has been collected, but this is only in investigation, which has been named as inquiry into the cause of death. And it is since in addition to the investigation, that will be carrying a weight that they will have to assess that evidence also to frame the, prepare the charge sheet. They should be form the part of the charge sheet and submit it to the court. ये guilt इसकी judicial magistrate ने भी certify किया. ये evidence उन्होंने भी record किया. They will also examine them under section 161 and will submit the charge. This is only the part of the interview as per me, because he cannot be held guilty or can be punished. Yes, departmentally they can be dealt with by this report. If the departmentally they are to be dealt with, that can be done.
Sir, moving on further, sir, for initiating an inquiry by a judicial magistrate, is there any requirement of moving of an application before the magistrate, or he can do so suo motu also? Over to you, sir.
Thank you. This is a very important question, I will say. Neither he can do the inquiry suo motu, nor an application can be moved before the judicial office, a magistrate. Even he may be the Ilaka magistrate of that jail, in which jail is located and the area is with him as jurisdictional area, allotted to him by the CJ. Every request is to be made to the session judge of the district, who is the authority to mark it to any officer. It may be ACJM, it may be a judicial magistrate, it may be any person. He may or may not be having a territorial jurisdiction of that area in which the offence has been. But of course, all the persons who are having the territorial jurisdiction of Patiala, in case of the death is there in the police custody of any police station in Patiala, or say in jail of Patiala. So this is a short answer to this.
Sir, moving on further, sir. If the CCTV camera footage is not made available to the inquiry magistrate, sir, what should he or she do? Over to you, sir.
Right. This is very important. Because in one authority which is latest reported as 2021-1 SCC page 184, that is Paramveer Singh Saini versus Baljeet Singh. In this case, Supreme Court has come heavily regarding the installment of CCTV cameras in all the police stations and the jails. Because this thing has been felt that if the cameras are installed there, every access can be checked. Every entry, every going out can be checked. Who has been taken from the cell can be checked. And it is very important that CCTV footage can provide a very good lead in deciding the inquiries which are there initiated under Section 176. But as a sad affair is that whenever such thing happen and our magistrates ask for CCTV footage, particular of that part, it is simple that it is said that it is not available. Reason? Camera kharab ho gaya tha. And in one case it was said, monkey तार तोड़ गए थे रात को ही जी, उसी रात को हमें पता ही नहीं लगा. So these type of lame excuses are put by not providing the CCTV footage. In this case, the action can be recommended that it is an intentional act which needs to be curbed, because despite this direction given by the Honorable Supreme Court, and action for contempt can also be referred. Adverse inference can also be taken, depending upon the other circumstantial evidence. So all those things are open to the judicial magistrate inquiring into if this is not supplied. Because now what has been said in this authority, that the cameras which can preserve the video filming up to 18 months should be obtained. Such technology, though it may be costly, such cameras should be obtained and installed. जबकि पहले ये था कि 1 month. सारे जो cameras हैं CCTV cameras, they can preserve the footage up to 1 month. So this is what has been said new in this authority. So this is view which I am catering, but this can be.
Sir, moving further, sir, what if during the process of conducting an inquiry, the said magistrate gets transferred? Over to you, sir.
Very important. This is also very important and being faced in certain cases. Because say if such is such a period when it is a transferring season, the magistrate is transferred, then who is to conduct the further inquiry or whether it is to be conducted by him at the new station? In this regard, the answer is very simple that no, he is not to carry out after transfer the inquiry. He will leave that inquiry there and then as in other cases, and it will be assigned to new magistrate of the having the jurisdiction of that area by the officer who has first asked him to conduct inquiry or his predecessor, if not so.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you. Moving further, sir. Sir, whether any sanction is required under section 197 of the Code of Criminal Procedure for prosecuting a police official accused of custodial debt. Over to you, sir.
In this case, so let us first see that what 197 says of the CRPC. So, this is with regard to the sanction which is there for judges and public servants. The acts which are protected by this section are offences which are alleged to have been committed by him by acting or purporting to act in the discharge of his official duty. This is very relevant. If we have to see or read it in very effective manner, then this line that while acting or purporting to act in discharge of his official duty can be read in the form acting in the discharge of his official duty, 2, purporting to act in the discharge of his official duty. So only these 2 acts are protected. If we take it as excesses or a torture which is not permitted, then by no stretch of imagination it can be said that this torture act was anything acting or otherwise purporting to act in the discharge of duty. When this is so, I think the sanction part is not available to me. So from prima facie, looking at the angle which I had just talked, the sanction will not be required. No question arises that in some cases, the torture or the things or the negligence might be in such a way which cannot be clothed outside the scope of these 2 things. That is acting in discharge of duty or purporting acting discharge of duty. So in this case, I will refer to 2 authorities. One, Davinder Singh and others of versus State of Punjab, a decision of 2016, in which there was an encounter case of disturbed area, in which it was said that prima facie it cannot be clothed, as I have said. Yes, if subsequently it is to looked into with the angle that yes, it was falling in such area of purported discharge of duty, it was not an excess which is to be led by evidence by the accused, then it can be said that yes, stop here, first go and bring the sanction and then we will proceed further. Because even in this case, it was said that it is a case where the necessity of the sanction may reveal itself in the course of progress of the case. And it will be open to the accused to place material during the course of trial for showing his duty was what he has done. The accused has in that case has a right to lead the evidence in this regard. And then the court will be seized of the matter unless the sanction is brought. But prima facie it is not required. So is the decision of Prakash Singh Badal versus State of Punjab, in which they have said that the need of sanction under section 197 for the avoidance of doubt, it is hereby declared that it is not applicable to any offence committed by public servant. So when torture is committed, it is offence. When death is caused, it is offence for which FIR has been written. When rape is committed in custody, it is, but yes. But yes, it is to be discussed according to stage of the case, where change or shift may take place. But since it is an offence, prima facie it is not required. So 197 is not required, prima facie.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Sir, we are grateful to you for elaborately and completely answer all the possible queries, evident from the fact that we have no query in the chat box.
So nice of you, Mr. Shergill, and so nice of the officers. But I am still open that if anybody wants any query to be answered, I am here. Otherwise, I am thankful to all.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
My regards to all the officers.
All attendees, one and all, thank you so much for being with us. We wish you a good day.
Good day.
Thank you so much.